Okay, good morning, everyone. Let me start with the reading one verse from our scripture. Guided by Sejungan, a man visited Sotasan, the founding master of Won Buddhism, at the Seokdu Hermitage. The master asked, "What words have you heard? And why did you come over this dangerous path?" The man replied, "I have heard of your high virtues and wished to see you at once." The master said, "What would you like me to do for you?" The man answered, "My mind is constantly disturbed by worldly desires and delusions, and I wish to keep an undisturbed mind." The master said, "To keep a right mind, first of all, you must be enlightened to the origin of the mind, and you should not use the mind in a prejudiced manner. If you'd like to know why this is so, think about this question." Having said this, the master wrote, "All principles and things return to one. Where then does that one return to?" It's one of a very well-known Koan or spiritual question. When you open your program booklet on page 2, you can see lots of spiritual questions that you can contemplate. Some of you visited Korea this spring, and the place where the Won Buddhist headquarters is located, the property is donated by this guy, Sejungan. He was an acupuncturist, herb doctor. He made a lot of money. He donated at that time 100 acres, but it's far bigger right now. When he asked, he would like to have his mind calm and peaceful. Isn't that interesting? Our founding master did not recommend him to teach meditation or any method of spiritual cultivation. He asked him to contemplate these spiritual questions, saying, to keep a mind, first of all, you must be enlightened to your original mind. You have to realize the nature of your mind. Why? Understanding, seeing into the nature of our mind is the fundamental solution to liberate ourselves from agonies and all kinds of suffering. So meditation is important, but as much as important is to contemplate and to get the solution of these spiritual questions. Pre-ministers of Won Buddhism are supposed to live in a communal life. We have to live in a dormitory. When I was a junior in the department of Won Buddhism in Wongang University, in the spring semester, I was very tired. We have to live according to the very strict schedule. I was very physically tired. From the end of May, strange rash started to develop on my face, especially on my forehead. It's a reddish, pretty big rash. It's very embarrassing to go outside. So I went to I met one dermatologist in the medicine department of Wongang University. and he checked that skin disease, and he could not understand why it occurred. And he asked me to take a biopsy. And after 1 week, the biopsy result told me nothing special. So the doctor simply said, well, could not exactly know the cause, and he gave me some type of ointment and a pill. It did not help at all. But that summer vacation, I happened to meet one herb doctor, and he read my pulse, and he told me the reason why I come to have that skin disease, lots of rash, is because your kidney is very weak. The water energy in your body is completely drained because you are so tired. And he said, if you'd like to take a good rest, and he gave us some herbal tea to strengthen my water energy and decrease the fire energy, some heat in my heart. It'll help a lot. Just like his word, after 2 months after I took his herbal tea, it disappeared completely. So if we have some problem, there is some fundamental cause and superficial cause. My rash did not happen because I did not wash my face often or something like that. It's basically my low stamina, my kidney and weak bladder and kidney function. That is the fundamental cause. Likewise, why we cannot have the freedom of mind? For example, why we cannot break our bad habit? Or we still have some anger problem? Or we'd like to let go our bad past memory. It's not easy. We'd like to forgive some friend or spouse. It's hard. Or low self-esteem, frustration, etc. Why those negative thoughts or emotions still linger in our mind? It is not necessarily because we don't meditate enough. That may be one of the reasons. But fundamentally, because we have not seen into our original mind or our true self. So we cannot liberate our mind from those external things. That is the fundamental reason. When Zen priests practice meditation, it is not necessarily for spiritual cultivation. It's basically to awaken themselves, to get enlightenment. That's why they spend lots of time on the meditation cushion. Buddhism, Bulgyo, it literally means, the Chinese character Bulgyo means the path to enlightenment. Buddhism, it sounds like some ideology, so the literal translation might be better. Then how can we attain enlightenment? When I was, my first workplace was the Seoul Meditation Center, after I was ordained. And I took in charge of one meditation, Buddha Dharma study group in one university. And we had a meeting on Thursday afternoon. So Rev.Yoo was at that time one of the students. And when I taught Won Buddhism scripture, one student who was studying engineering asked me, but I emphasized what the importance of meditation or awakening, etc. He asked, well, you Gyomunim means a teacher, Gyomunim, I just would like to have a happy and free life instead of trying to have liberation or awakening, etc. Do you know what I answered to his question? Do you remember what I said at the time? I said, I think I said very well. I said, one and the only way for a person to get happiness or freedom is for us to attain enlightenment. As long as the happiness or freedom of mind we search is perpetual and indestructible. Many external conditions from which we attain some happiness can be temporary. So in order to attain enlightenment, what is the path? The way is first, we have to raise questions. We have to ask first in order to get the answer. Isaac Newton, by the creative concept of gravity, he could explain so many phenomena in this universe. Why the apple dropped from the tree, or why there is a rise and the fall of the tide in the ocean, or why the earth rotates around the sun, the moon rotates around the earth. So many phenomena was explained by the simple concept of gravity. So one day, his friend, who is a journalist, asked, Newton, how did you come upon that great idea? And Newton replied to his friend, because I have thought about it all day long for many, many years. So we have to, in order to get the solution, we have to raise the questions first. When our mind becomes very calm and clear, many times some spiritual question automatically surface in our mind. Just like when the ripples disappear from the surface of the lake, the surface start to reflect the moon accurately. When I was a junior high or in high school, whenever I felt impermanence, I was enwrapped with a very, very strange feeling. Especially I very clearly remember one day I saw the movie Romeo and Juliet, both of the couple die and the theme song of impermanence. I was so deep in some question. Who am I? Or what is this? This means we usually call that mind. It's a label. It's just a name. That the entity we can see, we can hear, we can talk. Well, because of that, you can hear right now. What is that? I was so deeply in that. So that kind of experience lasted for several days in a very deep way, sometimes for several weeks. I did not know at the time. It's a kind of the Koan, which I later learned. Our previous head Dharma master of Won Buddhism, who visited here last year, when he was a prime minister, during the summertime, he went to the Byeonsan Retreat Center. Before noontime, he practiced meditation and studied the contemporary, the Heart Sutra and the Diamond Sutra. After lunch and before dinner, he told us he did some physical work, like chopping the wood and gathering the firewood, etc. One day, he was very tired after gathering some firewood. So he rested himself on a big rock. All of a sudden, this question arose in his mind. Why the breath that comes in have to go out? Why the breath that goes out will come in? To some people, it can be a silly question. He was so deep in that. It is the principle of yin and yang. So let's just say it is the voice of God calling home. Our founding master said in the scripture, driven by great motivation in a spiritual search, when a practitioner's study and the practice have reached a certain depth, he becomes so preoccupied with one great question that all other questions merges into one. Whether one is asleep or awake, or whether one sees or hears, every word, silence, action, and the rest turns into that question, so that the entire heaven and earth seem to be surrounded by it. Then suddenly, once one attains a thought that breaks through that one great question, all doubts dissipate and the genuine wisdom arises. Since the wisdom you have attained by seeing, listening, and thinking is only the first step to the first door in the long sequence of doors in attaining the genuine wisdom, you are not to be satisfied with what you have acquired so far. Just like all the rivers reach one ocean and got merged together, this and that, various questions eventually merge into one great question. That is, what is this? What is this? Who am I? What is this? We call them mind or consciousness. It's a very mysterious thing. You can hear, you can see me. At the same time, you can have a think about other things. How could that strange thing can carry out the multitask so beautifully? When one becomes very deep in that question, from that stage, we go into a very deep state of meditation. When you go to the sea and say, wow, the ocean is so tranquil. But look at the surface, but still there are lots of waves. Even though we think we are very deep in meditation, still some wandering, fleeting thoughts are there. But we go very deep in some spiritual question, the ripples start to disappear. Our founding master, since he was 7 years old, he searched for universal truth. Lots of questions about the universe arose in his mind. And it is going deeper and deeper to solve the question he did, he performed lots of ascetic practice. Especially from his mid-20s, he entered into very, very deep meditation. One day, his wife, around noontime, she came back from the field and set the lunch table, and you can eat the meal, it's a lunch. And she said goodbye. And the master was in the middle of the eating the steamed rice, holding the spoon. When she came back several hours later, she discovered the master was still holding the spoon. The steamed rice was covered with lots of flies during the summertime. So while we are resting or involved in action, one becomes in deep, deep samadhi or meditation because of these spiritual questions. But to regular practitioners, unfortunately, these questions don't arise that deeply. That's why masters in Zen tradition created some skillful method. They created some spiritual question and gave that to their students. That spiritual question is called Koan. The Japanese pronunciation of the Koan, the Korean or Chinese pronunciation. For example, when you open page 2, there are lots of cases for questioning. What body did you have before your parents were born? What is the sound of one hand clapping? Why this question is labeled as a koan or a public document? Because this is or can be the criteria to tell that person is awakened or not. Public document it is not some. It's not false. It is the authentic paper. And why in Zen tradition teachers say contemplating these questions, Koan, is a shortcut to enlightenment. Why in that tradition they really emphasized working with the koans? There are many Zen Buddhist schools. One of the dominant Buddhist schools in Korea and China is Rinzai Zen school. In the Rinzai tradition, in our one tradition, Sota tradition, when we practice a sitting meditation, we basically work with our breathing. We focus our mind, our awareness. But in the Rinzai tradition, teachers recommend you need to focus your mind, concentrate your mind on Koan that you receive from your teacher. In that way, they really emphasize. Then why Koan is or can be a good object of meditation? Why in the Rinzai tradition ask their students to contemplate on Koan when we meditate? It is because Koan works to stop our thinking mind. Koan looks like a riddle. What is the sound of a one-hand clapping? It looks like a riddle, but unlike riddle, it cannot be solved our reasoning or thinking mind. Only when your thinking mind disappears, then you can get the answer. But in our tradition, why our founding master said his followers that working with the Koan 24/7 is not the best way, it's not the great way? It is because there are a couple of reasons. If a person is not that much motivated in attaining enlightenment, he may lose some interest working with the Koan. Oh, I'd like to reduce stress or enhance my physical health. That's the main reason why I practice meditation. Then probably Koan contemplation is not a big motivation to them. Additionally, the main reason is when we ponder Koan, for example, everything is created by mind. All things are created by the mind. What does this mean? It should work to bring our thinking mind to a pause. But many times, including Zen priests who are very mature practitioners, they use their reason, they use their thinking mind. Consequently, instead of drop our fire energy, because they think about that Koan too long, the fire energy has arisen and chi blockage, it's a Zen illness happens, serious headache or some very suffocating sensation on their chest. For example, there is one legendary Zen master in Korea, Jeonggang S님. He worked with one Koan when he was from his early 20s, and in his late 20s he attained great enlightenment. But he just contemplated, thought about that Koan too seriously all day long. The fire energy has arisen, so he experienced the blood coming out of the nose, from the ear, even from the eyes. He could not meditate for many years because of that illness. So, in Won Buddhism, our master recommended on and off you need to contemplate the Koan. So, when you meditate on the meditation cushion, you better work with your breathing. But sometimes, for example, I basically focus on my mind, the tactile sensation of my belly to focus myself. But after taking shower, my body might become very soft. In that case, I place my awareness on my bodily sensation. Or as I talked yesterday, when you experience some pain, how can you focus your mind on your breathing? It's so distracting, the pain. At that time, you can temporarily place your awareness on the pain, and it will gradually disappear. If you just observe that without any judgment. Likewise, when your mind is too busy and you cannot focus your mind on your breathing easily, on and off, you can contemplate the Koan. You can pick up the Koan from here. Even though we do not contemplate the Koan 24/7, but we need to work with them with a greater dedication and sincerity. In the Zen tradition, they use this analogy. Have you seen our cat Hemi here? When it catches the mice, when it tries to catch the mouse, it stares at it first. Just like a cat stares at the mouse, we need to still work with the Koan. It's a Zen analogy. Or another teacher says, just like a mother is looking for her only son that she lost. In that kind of dedication, we need to work with the Koan. For example, what do you do when you go to the Walmart and the waiting line is too long? Well, you can check your email on your iPhone. That's okay. But when you wait in the bank or whatever, on and off, I strongly encourage you to work with the Koan. Which Koan you can pick up? In older days, teachers gave the students some Koan. But unfortunately, that teacher is a very spiritual person who knows the student very well, the student's level of spirituality, intelligence. But if the Koan is not a good match to the student, then the student, many Zen priests struggle with the Koan they receive from their teacher for a long time. So our founding master and our third head Dharma master said, pick up the Koan that you would like to contemplate. As I said last Sunday, if you can intellectually understand that Koan, it's not your Koan. You cannot understand the Koan completely. It does not make sense. That is something you need to contemplate in order to drop your thinking mind, dissolve your dualistic mindset. The Faraday, the British physicist who made a big contribution, the theory of electromagnetism and electrochemistry. He had a very low schooling background. And one day he was visited by the British Prime Minister, Gladstone. He's a very talented statesman. And in a little derogatory way, the Prime Minister asked to that physicist, what are you doing? It means what I'm doing is very practical, very beneficial to the people in Britain, but why do you waste your time? Something like that. But Faraday replied, I'm working on something called electricity. Sir, in a very, very near future, it will make a huge change in the human society. Think about that. We don't have electricity in our life. All these things. So Faraday laid one of the person who made electricity practical and used by the regular people, one of the contributors of Faraday. So along with the sitting meditation, if you on and off contemplate some spiritual question, your practice will go to another level. So pick up some Koan and read this chapter, the collection of the spiritual questions during this retreat. Thank you.